After a year of masks and social distancing, these images are almost surreal. This is Israel, and these pictures aren't from the distant past, but rather about a month ago. The country has been a world leader in vaccinations, and the result is a massive drop in COVID-19 cases. These are celebrations when the government lifted its outdoor mask mandate. With cases since dropping even further, indoor mask mandates may be lifted in the coming weeks. This is remarkable. But can the US expect the same? Absolutely. And if you're a business owner, you need to be ready for it. But before we get into that, let's recap a couple projections made in our last episode, where we discussed the possible fourth wave of COVID cases, drawing parallels to World War II. Take a look at this clip. This latest wave might be thought of as, and no pun intended, the Battle of the Bulge. COVID's last major counteroffensive, successfully thwarted by vaccinations on the country's road to recovery. This seems to have been pretty spot on. Here's what cases looked like at that point, and here's where they are now. Note that the small bump in cases has not only turned back down, but has dropped significantly from the high point. Considering all the doom and gloom at the time, I'd say I did a pretty good job on this one. But I was a little bit off elsewhere. Like in this clip. We could see average vaccination rates increase to even higher levels over the next month, to even 4 or 5 million vaccines administered per day. On the other hand, the faster we vaccinate, the sooner we will get through those readily willing to be vaccinated. The country next faces convincing hesitant Americans to get vaccinated. Depending on how many Americans that is, we could see vaccination rates start to plateau in July or even June. Yeah, that was a bit off. To be fair, at the time, vaccination rates were skyrocketing, but the bottom pretty much dropped out days later. We didn't reach 4 or 5 million vaccinations per day. Instead, vaccinations dropped from a peak of 3.3 million per day, ticking up slightly before dropping back down again to about 1.2 million per day. So that was pretty much a fail. Can't win them all. So with rates dropping so low, does this mean that all is lost? Well, here are the latest vaccination stats. Note that 50% of the US population has received at least one dose of vaccine. As we will see, this is a pretty big deal. When accounting for children, this is in line with survey data indicating that 56% of adults had already gotten vaccinated. So where do the numbers go from here? Just 9% of adults said they intended to get vaccinated ASAP, which when accounting for vaccinations since this polling came out, comes out to just about 2% of the population. That's why vaccination rates have fallen so sharply. We've vaccinated almost all of the low-hanging fruit of willing people. Rates will be helped out with the FDA approving vaccines for children 12 to 15. Unfortunately, polling indicates that just 30% of those kids' parents will get them vaccinated ASAP, adding another 2% to the total. The rest of the survey data brings a mix of news. Unfortunately, the population of those significantly and absolutely opposed to being vaccinated has stayed pretty steady. At this point, it seems unlikely many will peel away from this group. So, if you know anyone that's absolutely opposed to vaccinations, you'll probably end up spinning your wheels trying to sway them. On the other hand, the percentage of those on the fence has steadily declined. When accounting for the remaining wait-and-see adults, as well as similarly positioned parents of 12 to 17-year-olds, we could see as much as another 14% of the US population vaccinated. The polling indicates that parents enthusiastic to get their children age 11 and younger vaccinated could increase that total vaccinated population to up between 72 and 77%. But it could be as late as fall or even 2022 before vaccines are approved for that age group. So right now, we can expect vaccinations to reach between 54 and 68% of the population. But experts have said that achieving herd immunity will require 65 or 80% of the population to be vaccinated. So should we be panicking right now? No, not at all. In fact, we are doing fine. For context, let's take a look at other countries ahead of the US on vaccinations. We'll start with Israel, where they are on the verge of throwing away masks. This chart compares COVID case rates with vaccinations. This descending line is cases per million people. This is people who have received at least one dose of vaccine. Well, this is the population that is fully vaccinated. Note this plateau here between dropping case rates. One could conjecture that this could be due to the UK variant, which hit Israel earlier than the US. Keep in mind then, these results account for more contagious variants. By late February, Israel had administered at least one dose of vaccine to 50% of its population. Note two critical trends after this happened. First, within a couple weeks, cases dropped dramatically. Second, administration rates quickly slowed, with most vaccinations being second doses. Looking at the UK, also above 50%, we see cases have similarly dropped dramatically. The story is a little different in Chile, where cases have held pretty steady despite vaccinations. However, whereas Israel and the UK administered the highly effective Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca vaccines, Chile has relied on the CoronaVac. That's still my favorite vaccine name, from Chinese pharmaceutical company Sinovac. As noted in the very first COVID vaccination video, the CoronaVac is a traditional vaccine. I say this because many people opposed to COVID vaccinations are waiting for traditional vaccines because currently approved vaccines, quote-unquote, mess with your DNA. Well, first of all, studies now show that it is COVID-19 that messes with your DNA, leading to long-term health impacts. And second, if you're waiting for a traditional vaccine, these are the results you may be holding out for. So where does this all leave the US? Here's a chart comparing US and Israeli COVID cases per million people. Once again, Israel reached 50% partially vaccinated in late February, and about 6 weeks later began lifting mask mandates regardless of vaccination. The US is now reaching 50% partially vaccinated as well. And while vaccination rates are dropping, let's keep in mind that the same thing happened in Israel and cases there still plummeted. So what is about 6 weeks from now? July 4, 2021, making this July 4th very possibly a sort of COVID Independence Day. But there are caveats. I'm not necessarily saying we are on the brink of herd immunity. We could be, but that's a very complicated question. Also, it's not impossible that cases could start ticking up among the unvaccinated, particularly later in the winter during the traditional flu season. And we have to keep in mind the potential for new variants that are more contagious or resistant to vaccines. Finally, it's not guaranteed that masks and social distancing are going away this summer. Many public health experts will understandably take a risk-averse position and encourage these mandates to remain. Then again, it has become recently apparent just how difficult it is to maintain mask mandates in the face of dropping COVID cases. So there is an argument that the safe thing to do is keep masks and social distancing all summer. But from a business perspective, the opposite is actually true. The safe thing for companies across America is to be prepared for a wave of activity in a mere few weeks as people start leaving their homes. Put differently, the risk-averse position for the American economy is to be ready to restart. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content on getting through this pandemic. And if you're an anti-vaxxer, go ahead and click the dislike button because you're going to do that anyway. If you have any thoughts or questions, please leave them in the comments. And as always, stay safe.